The discussion of this session will be on creating a successful brand that communicates the ethos and quality and environment of education business, ensuring individuality in a competitive market to meet enrollment targets. A stand-alone goal on quality education is vital to any sustainable development institution. Improve student outcomes and transitions to and from school through parent engagement, quality teaching, and learning environments. So I would like to call on stage our panelists. First of all, Mr. Prajod Rajan, who is the co-founder and CEO, Euroschool, EuroKids, and he's also the moderator for the session. A huge round of applause for Sir, please. Mr. Ryan Pinto, who is the CEO, Ryan International Group of Institutes, on stage, please. A huge round of applause. I see teachers are falling asleep after the lunch. So this we get to hear a lot. So this is our time to please wake up class, wake up. Vinesh Menon, Deputy CEO, Global Discovery Schools. Mr. Anirudh Gupta, who is the CEO, DCM Group of Schools. Ms. Abha Meghe, Director, Meghe Group of Schools. A huge round of applause for such an eminent panelists. Thank you so much. So I'll just hand over the mic to Mr. Rajan to take it forward. And the stage is yours, sir. Can we have mics on the stage, please?
I always thought moderating a session is a easy task. Moderating a session after lunch may be difficult task, but moderating a panel which has got a distinguished set of CEOs here, accomplished professionals, I think my task is fairly difficult. But this is a subject that has been a matter of a lot of intrigue for me ever since we were initially publishers, and from publishing we got into setting up of preschools, and from preschools now to schools. It actually intrigues me about how educational institutions can actually create a brand for themselves. So this session is about brand. It's about branding. So before I get started, I have a AV which I wanted all of you to see, which probably sets the context of our discussion today. Can we have the AV, please? Thank you for that. I loved a few sentences in this, and it says that brands are now yours. You make them, you unmake them, they mean what you say. I know that this is a education-focused conference here, but I'm sure all of us have visited Starbucks, right? All of us here Starbucks? All Starbucks fans? Yes, we can see some Starbucks fans. And in Starbucks, it's sometimes not about the coffee. It's sometimes about the place. In the education context, if you look at it, are most of the brands saying the same thing? Is the offering very similar and the communication is the same? Both content and form are getting more and more difficult to differentiate. And there is a often used word, all-round development, holistic development. Is it a cliche? You know, sometimes when we think about Disney theme parks, you think about Disney and they don't say that we run theme parks, they say we provide fantasies. When we think about schools, educational institutions, do we just say we run schools? Or is it something else? So if Starbucks is not about coffee, then similarly, what's our story in this category? That's really the topic at hand today. So I'm going to start with Ryan here. His group runs a distinguished set of K-12 schools in the country and abroad. He just enlightened us about his foray in Dubai as well. So how can one build a school brand, if you were to call that? Is that ever possible?
Well, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. And before I can start, I would like to give God all the glory and for this opportunity to be on this wonderful, distinguished panel. Thank you to elets and Mr. Gupta, and it's always wonderful to come back to this conference. Talking about brands, as you know, our organization had a very humble beginning in 1976 in Mumbai, in a very small room. And the founders of our organization are teachers. And that has stayed with us all these 4 decades. So yes, we have 135 schools across 40 cities, almost 3 lakh children that come to our school every day, and now internationally as well. And all of our schools we own and operate them. We are not a franchise. So for us, when we started off, it wasn't that we're going to establish a brand or establish a network of schools. No, we started this with the idea of we're going to give good education that is going to empower the youth for life ahead, for what is to come. And that's where our journey started. And I think as an organization, we have kept that to our core, that no matter where we go, every year we grow at about 4 to 5 schools a year. Yes, you may know us big in Delhi, NCR, we're in Delhi today, but we are across the country in small cities, not even Tier 2, not even Tier 3, small places. And we've gone there because as an organization, we don't have any external investors. And so for us, our focus as an organization, connecting back to our value, and I think that kind of loops into our brand, is to give access to students across the nation to quality education. And yes, you mentioned the word all-round development. That's very much part of our brand. That's in our logo. And that is something that we believe, because we don't think that we are a school that educates children just for tests, just for reports, just for the assessments, just for that percentage. Not at all. We believe that we are a school that is a place for learning, lifelong learning, and it is about students exploring their God-given gifts and talents, that we are there as a guide to help them in that journey. And so yes, it is possible, I think, to develop a brand, but that's not where we started off. Even today, we believe that at heart, we are educationists, we are teachers. And as a brand, those words, the key words that you looked at, that is important today. Because I think a brand differentiates you, gives you that credibility. maybe you're going to a new place, or there is competition coming into an existing place. But because of your reputation, there is a trust to your brand.
Sure. Thank you, Ryan. So which cities, if you were to look at, you said you're in Delhi. Are you also in a tier 3 city as well? And if you can just give us some cities there.
So let me go down to, we are in, from the north, maybe an example would be Raebareli. We are there. We were there in 2005. It was the only standing structure in that place. And we had to bring in teachers from across the country, give them housing, and actually give them security, because it wasn't a safe place as such for people to be willing to come there. We are in cities like Durg, Damtari, Jabalpur, places that many of you may not even know where it's on the map. But we've gone there, and we haven't gone there in the last decade. We started going to such places right from our inception in the 80s, in the 90s, and we continue to do that.
Super. Thank you. Vinesh, any thoughts that you have to share about, so now you have 13 schools across the west and the south of India?
Yeah, and across north.
And across north as well.
Yeah, so I'll start by repeating what I normally do in all these conferences. We are a young chain. We're just 4 years old, and we've got 12 schools right now, and actually yesterday we just forayed into Nasik for the 13th. Now, obviously for a chain like ours, who's new, the whole big challenge is how do you build this name of ours, how do you build, as we call the brand, in a space that has already got so many distinguished institutions and schools across. So I think I read somewhere that schools are not, they're not a commodity, and parents are not consumers. So we may not be able to really follow the normal beaten track of building a brand as one would do in the other spaces. Like while I completely recognize and understand what you showed in the video, in the AV, but how do you do this a little differently? Because there is a lot of emotions that gets involved in this. And as it is schooling out here, the whole commercialization is a big bad taboo for schools. So that, I think, is the challenge. Now, I think my simple take is there are close to 240 million, this is the only industry where we have 240 million brand ambassadors, free of cost. Okay, the students and their parents. Yeah, that's the number of students who study in our schools. So what better brand ambassadors can you get than those guys? So I think as long as you're able to focus on the inputs and continue to do the kind of things that you stand for as an institution, I think you'll be able to build your name and brand as the time goes by. I think the real challenge is how do you, if you're a new chain and you want to enter into a city, now tomorrow I'm going to get into Nasik, how do you get the local population of Nasik to know that there is someone like us who is coming in? There is something that you need to understand about us, and that does call for a lot of noise to be made. You have to kind of create a little communication across the place, get the parents to come and test us out, understand who we are, understand our promises. So that becomes stage one. Stage two is to really start delivering what we have promised. And I think during that period, which is the first 2 to 3 years of a school, we have to stay engaged a lot. I think the whole branding really then becomes communication and engagement. And I think after that, from year 3 and 4 onwards, as long as you keep your consistency on, your processes are in place, and you keep innovating, your brand ambassadors become your children, and you automatically start simply starting to go through the compounding route of more and more enrollments, purely because the experience and the results that you are there to offer starts showing. So I think that's the simple, straightforward policy that we are trying to work on. As a school, we stand for 3 areas. I think one, we'd like to let every child be who he or she is. We don't want to kind of really navigate the way the child grows. At the same time, bring in a certain sense of discovery to the learning process, and that's why we are called discovery schools. And third, I think as the child starts gaining in confidence, if you really work on the child's confidence and self-esteem, and the child starts then moving towards the higher classes, academic rigor would need to be brought in, because India still looks for marks. But the approach of the child towards the higher classes would probably be a little different if the foundation is set on the lines of what we are trying to do. And if that starts getting, the word starts spreading around, I think we should be fairly, moving along.
Thanks, Vinesh. I have one question for you about uh, in India, as a society, we are fairly focused on the outcomes, right? We are very outcome focused. So schools like yours, are they also focused on outcomes? Because it would mean that you can only create a brand for yourself if the outcome comes out, and here I speak about probably academic outcomes here. Is that something that your chain of schools is also focused on?
So fortunately or unfortunately, we have still not reached. I mean, we are just 4 years old. So obviously, if you go by the vintage of our schools, the highest class that we offer today is the 9th standard. So really speaking, the litmus test will really come to us in the next couple of years, because that's when the 10th and the 12th grades start getting recognized and start getting tracked. So that's when I can really talk about the actual outcomes that an Indian parent looks for. But if I really break it down into smaller outcomes that today's parents are looking for, especially parents in Punjab or parents in Bhopal, or those outcomes are largely to do with, is my child, starting to really grow in confidence? Is he able to talk? Is he able to speak in English? Is he able to do mental math? Is he getting aligned to technology? These are some of the smaller milestones that we seem to be obviously keeping a track on. But then we don't really, I think our focus remains the inputs, because I think, inputs will lead to an outcome. So I think that's where the focus is.
Thank you. Anirudh, you, so here's Vinesh with a 4-year-old chain, and your group has been running schools for the last 70 years. So 70 years, and you have now about 12 institutions there. Clearly, you have an edge to be able to create a brand for yourself, and what's your thoughts on this?
You see, when we started in 1946, we never thought of building a brand, and as such there were no brands. People were not brand conscious, that time, especially in education. So there was no, kind of a deliberate strategy or an attempt to, build up that brand. But over the years, as we moved on and moved forth, so yes, people started coming to us and started telling us, yes, you are a brand in this region. Then we realized that, there's something like, brand, and we need to be conscious about that. When this word you talk about brand, I think brand is a promise, brand is a legacy, brand is a faith. And with these 7 decades of experience, it's very important, to be consistent, to adapt, to change. If you look into other sectors, if I talk about automobile sector, ambassador, ambassador used to be brand sometime. So now, since they didn't kept pace with the changing times, so they are nowhere to be seen, they're becoming obsolete. If you talk about mobile, I talk about Nokia. So it's very important, once you are a brand, it's very important for you to be cautious about the fact that, all the processes, right from your academic strength to your administrative functioning of administrative areas, as we are talking about the alumni, they are the biggest ambassadors. So the kind of product we are churning out, how we are working on the students. So it's very important, you have to be very particular about each and every aspect of the school management, school functioning. And over the years, we have evolved, we have learned, we have grown, and we have been able to somehow keep pace with the changing times. We have embraced technology. So, in our case, it was not a strategy, but it happened. And yes, as we all know that if you have to sustain, you have to grow. So now we are working on it in a, kind of a structured manner, and we are building up a brand. As Vinesh said that, you are venturing into places and areas, where, people don't know much about you, though in this era of social networking, Facebook, websites, WhatsApp, your reputation travels much faster than, I mean, like if you're venturing into a new territory, I mean, yes, and you started up new, so people will Google, they will try to find out, and yes, I mean, if your report card is good, so you have an advantage than a newcomer, who's just, set up something.
Okay. Thank you. I have a question for you, Anirudh. You're a 70-year-old institution. That's a great vintage in that sense. Normally in India, you would see that a lot of institutions are built around personalities there. It's never about a brand sometimes. It's also about the personality there. May not be a good or a bad thing. Just wanted your thoughts around it. That sometimes it is that personality which means the founder principle of the institution, which then drives the brand. Like we say, brand is what you make of it there. What's
Yes.
been your experience?
You're right, like, Sanjeev Kapoor eventually became a brand in, a particular area where, I mean, there were hardly any, chefs or, people of that eminence. It's very important, and it happens sometime. In our case also, it happened so. The founder of the school, Mr. M.R. Das, he was an eminent educationist. And during those initial, years, like when India just gained independence and we became a border town, because one of our first schools which we had set up was in a cantonment, and we were just, few kilometers from the international border, Pakistan. So that time, it was not more about our brand, it was more about that person, who had set up. Like, instead of saying that, I want to send my child to DCM, people used to say that I want to send my child to Mr. Das. So yes, I mean, it's, and I think it's still relevant, I mean, the people behind the brand, their credibility, their skills, their knowledge, it makes a difference.
Sure. Does anyone want to add? Vinesh, you have a...
No, I think we'll kind of talk on this a little later in depth, but I have a slightly different point of view. While I completely understand that the brand is really what is really made by the founder. We, for example, we don't have a founder. There are about 104 investors who have put in money behind us, and we are an institution that has been brought together by a lot of like-minded people, and many of them who would not even be known or who would not even been seen in the outside world. What we are attempting to try and do is precisely this: try and see if we can create a platform that can slowly start. Look, of course, the teacher inside the classroom is perhaps a very, very important personality, and that cannot be ever, done away with. But overall, as an organization, as a school chain, can we try and create a platform which can deliver down 10, 15, 20, 30 years, irrespective of who the person is at the helm, is something that we are trying to do. It's not easy, but I think that's the approach that we are trying to take. Perhaps that's the change that we are trying to bring in today's world.
And do you want to add to this? Any thoughts around this there?
No, I mean, I'd echo a couple of my panelists, co-panelists. They mentioned about alumni and about legacy and all of that. And it was wonderful for me, really encouraging for me. Whenever I go to different places, doesn't matter which city, which place, I always look out for at least one person who's an alumni or a parent, somebody connected. And as I walked in, I met one of our students from our Greater Noida school who passed out in 2010. And in fact, he's working for elets. And I was really encouraged to see that, and he's doing really well. I met one of our parents from our Kundanalli branch, whose 3 children studied there and now has a company, and he actually has a stall here, giving back into education. So it's wonderful for us as an organization, as a school, to see our stakeholders all kind of, carrying forward the brand. And as many of them said, yes, the teacher, for us, is very important, because we can't be there every day in our 135 campuses. The teacher is so important and so critical because they are the face of the organization. And of course, the students themselves. In our schools, we have the school parliament, the student parliament. We have a prime minister, we have a president, we have an education minister, transport minister, health, environment. They are the ones that carry, I would say, the organizational culture is very much tied to the brand of the organization. And they live the brand every single day.
Thank you, Ryan. Abba, your group runs 23 institutions, both K-12 as well as higher technical education institutions as well.
Right.
What's your view around institutions as brands?
Very first thing I would like to quote here, the school or any education institute is not a product to brand, or you can say to hammer the human brains and we can sell the product. Because like just we have seen the video and like Coca-Cola, it was just hammering the human brains and they can do their selling. But the school or any institution where the human beings are involved, and particularly we are as a school educators are involved in the human, dealing with the human beings, the small kids. If anything goes wrong, definitely the whole life wasted, or we are spoiling the life. And if everything is fine, definitely we are creating the personalities. So branding of the school or branding of any education institutes takes a long period. It depends on how the quality of the school is, how the alumni are from the school. So take out the batch of the students, it takes a long time in my view, because I experienced that from last 25 years. My schools, we have 23 schools, but before to start the school, the Meghe group was into the higher education. They were having the engineering college, medical college, and there were many other institutions, pharmacy and MBA and all. Then they started the school. So it was easy for we people to make a brand, as a Meghe group was there. Some name was there. And our schools are in the, particularly not in the big cities, it's a tier 2 and tier 3 cities. But my experience is to create a faith of the parents on the school, that's the biggest branding. Then giving the first and foremost importance are the results. Then what is a good school? And in my view, the definition is guarantee of overall development. That is a good. So, if we create that faith and that assurance to the parents, it's easy to create a brand of institution. And nowadays, the security is also a very important issue in the school to create a brand. My child is safe in that school. My child is safe in that building. My child is safe under these people. So that is also a very important thing. So while working with this institution from so many years, I feel the branding is in the institution takes a long process. It's a long process, and particularly the human touch with the faculties, all stakeholders, particularly parents, students, and the teachers, along with the management involving in that. Ryan has rightly quoted that we cannot be there every time in the schools. But the faith on all stakeholders is very important. The bonding is very important. Then their views, particularly taking their views and respecting the views are very important in this school business. I said business, definitely we are charging the fees and we are doing the business of the selling the education. But still it is very difficult to create a brand in the society of the good school. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Abba. I have a question here. When we think about one of the stakeholders, that is parents there, when we say quality school, is the association more so with infrastructure? Because good quality means good infrastructure. Is that how one of the stakeholders in the form of parents think about this?
No, in my view, only the building is a building. To create a school, it's takes a long process. That means it's the involvement of the stakeholders are important. Building is not a school. Building becomes a school when the faith and their devotion, their belongingness, their bonding is getting created, then becomes a school. So only good infrastructure is not a good school. The good school has many other aspects to create a brand.
Anirudh, do you want to?
I have a different take on this. You see, nowadays, yes, infrastructure is not the only thing, but nowadays it does matter. You know, like, because like Vinish is saying, they are just 4 years into it. I mean, you know, they cannot talk about their board results or their academic, you know, performance over the years. So first and foremost, what parents see in the school nowadays is good infrastructure, safe infrastructure. I mean, this new coinage, you know, like smart school, futuristic school. So parents do come and ask, आपके स्कूल में ये है, आपके स्कूल में स्मार्ट बोर्ड है, आपके स्कूल में स्विमिंग पूल है. I mean, it might not be relevant, but I think it's important in the sense that infrastructure does matter. It's not the, I mean, only thing. And yes, over the years, I mean, you know, there's so many other things. And like Rian and, you know, Abha, they've been talking about the quality of teachers. Fine. So everybody's promising, you know, like all-round development. If you go to a, you know, a small school in a village, they will also, you know, promise that, yes, what's your USP? We ensure all-round development. We are smart school. They'll promise the moon. Fine. So, you know, starting from infrastructure to quality of human resource, to the teaching learning process, to the life skills, you know, I mean, it's an endless, you know, list now. And what I see, you know, every time, like, you know, parents say the school should be AC. Okay, once you have done the school AC, then they move on to the next. No, I mean, one AC is not sufficient. There has to be at least 2 ACs. It has to be a centralized, you know, this thing. So, I mean, as I mean, you know, the social fabric is changing. The families are becoming more and more nuclear. There is a whole lot of awareness about schools. I mean, and so many of online users, you know, like we are now having virtual PTMs. Fine. So nowadays parents say, okay, I don't have time, and they are looking at schools, okay, you know, I just need to pay this much, and this is the product I want. Fine. So it's becoming something like that.
Sure, Anirudh. I'm sure a lot of people sitting in the audience will echo with what Anirudh is saying here, right? I'm saying parental expectations sometimes, especially with respect to infrastructure, is only building by the day there. How about you?
I just want to add on to this thing. See, though I told it is not a brand or it is not a product to sell, but it's in the parents' view, particularly the young parents' view, those who are in the very techno-savvy and those who are working in the IT sector and all these things, those who don't have time and want a virtual parents meeting and all. So in their views, when I'm paying this much, so my child should get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, these things. So that aspect has to be changed, particularly though as a parent, when they were in the school, things were different. But when they want to put the child in the school, they want everything like their software companies. So it's a take and give
Sure.
business.
Absolutely.
You know, social status also. People, you know, rather than concerned about the education of the children, sometime they just want to, I mean, kind of showcase, you know, my child is going to that school. I mean, it's...
Sure, Anirudh.
Yeah.
I'm sure that, you know, we can talk about this a lot because parents probably look at schools now as being service providers. So there is probably that big shift there of schools being looked at service providers. I just want to put a word of caution on the point of infrastructure, that over-reliance on the infrastructure is not a differentiator, because another school can come up which has even more better infrastructure, so that then doesn't become your USP, or if you were to look at it, right? Vinesh, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think, you know, the point is what is defined as infrastructure. I mean, are we just looking at the design of the building, or is it also the quality of construction? For example, the furniture inside the classrooms, if they're wooden and they've got a few nails sticking out, that's not good. I mean, I think that's also infrastructure in a way, but that's not good for the kids. So I think it has to be a good blend of the following 5 aspects as I see it. I would call it learning space and design, which includes the learning spaces, the design, what goes behind how you actually create a learning environment for the kids. I think infrastructure really comes into that. So how do you really make the walls talk, for example? How do you make the floors talk? How do you make every part of the school talk? I think pedagogy, of course, is something that we can never do away with, and that takes into account the core of every school. The third would be definitely the whole technology and its reliance on technology. I maintain that technology should be at the back end, and the front end should still have an emotional connect, but it cannot be devoid of technology. Fourth is the human capital that really drives the whole delivery of what we're trying to do here. And fifth, I think, is the processes that one puts into place. Transport processes. When 10 buses come and the children get out, how do you really go about doing the whole thing? How do you get the school to get the children back into their homes? Do we have RFIDs these days? These things matter. So I think as long as you're able to have, none of this can really be over-relied upon. So you can't have a scenario where it's a dilapidated school, but just the learning and the education is fantastic, so that can be the best place, and you can have a few steps which are dangerous for the kids. No. You can't have a great infrastructure with all the money put behind it, but the teacher quality is not really up to the mark. So I think as long as you're able to keep a good balance of these 5 elements, I think we should be home.
Sure. So, Vinesh, I have a question for you. You run 13 schools here, and you chose to also distribute that using franchising there. There is a
Big bad word.
Yes, sometimes in the K to 12 segment, you say that if you franchise, then which means that there is lack of quality. Is that something that you've been met with? There is that cynicism?
Yes, in the beginning, no now. We run 12 schools, we just got into the 13th. See, our model is a little different. When we associate with education partners, as we call them, we are actually a school managing firm. Our role is to manage a school end to end, right from the financial projections to the hiring of the teachers, to the training, to the assessments, to the delivery, parent engagement. The whole 9 yards is really managed by us, by the firm. Our education partner simply brings in the assets, the infrastructure, the movable and immovable elements inside it, and the land. That's it. They do not really get into running of the school. So in a way, call it, if I were to do this and have my own infrastructure, maybe I wouldn't be able to get the dream of being able to spread this across every town in India, and therefore I had to go through the franchising route. But the model ensures that we do not let every franchisee run it their own way. So you can't have a global discovery school, Bhopal, operating different from a global discovery school, Tirupur, from a global discovery school in Punjab. So that is something that we have managed to do so far. As we scale up, it's going to remain, it's just going to be a challenge, but we do believe that we have the right infrastructure to get that done. I would somewhere, not exactly the same analogy, but somewhere like to correlate us to, let's say, the Ubers and the Olas of the world, who has a platform, who brings the customer and the car together, and bring about the experience to ensure that everybody is happy. So that's really what we are trying to do here.
Okay. Brian, do you have what's your view on this?
You won't agree.
That's the purpose of a panel discussion, right? If you all agree, then.
For us, the model that we operate, as I mentioned earlier, is that we go out, we get the asset, we build the school, and we engage with our parents, and we build a relationship with our students. And I wouldn't debate whether a franchise model is good or bad. I think it depends on the individual person or the group or an organization, what they feel best suits their aim, their goal, their vision, their mission. we know our vision and mission is to reach every child, and we believe that in order to reach every child with that same level of quality is that we have ownership. Because we, continuously visit all our schools. We have a mandate in the office that you shouldn't be in the office all day. Whether you're in IT, whether you're in marketing, whether you're in procurement, whether you're in logistics, go to the school. See what's happening. Engage with the staff, engage with the parents, engage with the students. See what's happening in our campuses. Because we are, as I said, and I keep repeating myself, we are at heart we are educationists, we are teachers. We can't, we have over 9,000 buses in the country. We could be a transport company. We have all of this infrastructure. We could be an asset or an infrastructure company. We have all of these teachers that we manage. We could be a HR firm, a recruitment firm, but that's not who we are. We love being in the classroom. I'm not a teacher by qualification, but I do love to go and engage, especially I'm a business student in university and masters. I'm a finance, I took interest in finance, and I do go in and engage with our students with those particular courses. And for us, it's that connect. We love to be connected with our students, with our parents, with our staff. And that's that emotional bond which we believe that the only way to maintain it is, to continue down this course.
Yes,
Vinesh,
just to make it exciting, so what if I were to say that this is exactly what we do? Okay, so we go to the schools, we meet the parents, we are in the classroom, we have engagement with we even have what is called Chai Pe Aapki Rai sessions, where if any of us or the central team goes to any school, we conduct what is called a Chai Pe Aapki Rai. It's a branded theme, by the way. And the parents are told to talk to us very openly. It's not a PTM. And we talk about what their issues are in the school overall. And that makes a big difference because the parents feel that they're getting a chance to actually talk freely. So, I completely endorse, by the way, what Ryan is saying. I'm just trying to say that just because it is a franchising model doesn't mean that some of these things cannot be done. We have what is called a co-founders audit list, which runs into nearly 250 line items. And each of these line items are constantly ticked off by anyone who keeps visiting these schools. So I think as long as we're able to maintain that process-driven approach without taking away the emotions that is to be kept, as Abba said, the whole bonding point, which is required from an HR perspective, I think it'll be much easier to really start the scaling up process. So
if I could add one last point.
Please.
I would like to say that it's not about the model, whether it's a franchise or you own it. It's about the person or the people with their motive. You could have a person who owns and runs a school, but have completely wrong motives, completely wrong perspective on life, and they can just count their students as, okay, sheeps in a barn. So it's not about, I wouldn't say which model is good and bad. It's about what is your motive of being an educator, being into this a sector of educating young children in the future of a nation. I think if you have that motive and you're focused right, then it depends on what model fits, best.
Sure.
I'll add just one point here. Like, in addition to person, place, I think procedures are very important. Nowadays it's, paramount, to have those standard operating procedures, right from disaster management to security to housekeeping. So whether it is a franchisee model or a COCO model, or if you have all the SOPs in place, I think it doesn't matter.
Sure. Great. I think you spoke about SOPs and procedures. So the question really is McDonaldization of education ever possible? So if I was to use the parlance of saying McDonald's per se there, so is the McDonaldization of education possible? Which means McDonald's runs a very superior franchise across various countries, but they have a process that works, right? So is it just about the process then?
Yes, I think it's quite possible, and we are moving towards in that direction because it's going to be survival of the fittest, as this new regulatory framework is, in place now. So I think in due course of time, it's going to be a big enterprise, the brands and the visibility will be more. And the government, I believe, is opening up to the foreign investors in education also. So a few years down the line, we can see a lot of foreign brands also, entering Indian market, and a lot of Indian brands, venturing into, other markets of the world, yes, I think it's quite possible.
It's
and
quite
it's
possible?
already happening now.
It's already happening as well.
Just add on to this, particularly what Andrew said, that the SOPs are there. Along with that, whatever the model, the individual model or the franchise model, whatever the model is there. But if you have a same vision and particularly the quality assurance systems, there are systems in the schools. Every school, every institution has their own systems, own ethos of the working. Yes, audits and the ethos. So with that, we can maintain the quality, whatever model is there.
Okay. Just on that point, just one more question that I have is about differentiation. So what really then is differentiation? So is it about price sometimes? So when we say that you're a CBSE school, there are many CBSE schools. So how does differentiation take place? Is it product differentiation and price differentiation which just drives this?
Price is a one, what you can say, the determining factor for the education. That's a one thing, particularly where I'm working and my group is working in very tier 2 and tier 3 cities, where the price is very much concern for the parents. That's the one thing. Apart from that, what services, what type of, like which we are talking about the infra and all this, that's the, they are maintaining that the price along with the services. The third important thing is to have a proper monitoring systems which we have in the school and the results. So results are also there.
Okay.
I think it's become more of an individual preference. You know, I might be interested in just core academics, you know. I might be interested in a school which is high-end, you know, as per my own, you know, I just want to send my child to the costliest school, irrespective of other factors. If I'm interested in sports, I might be willing to send my child to a school which is encouraging sports. So I think, you know, it's more of an individual preference, and, you know, nowadays there are so many choices that, yes, you know, parents can, I mean, select out of the list that, you know, okay, this school is where I like to send my child to.
Okay, so we've got to wrap up now very soon. So Ryan, do you have a comment on this there?
On differentiation?
On differentiation?
I mean, there are various aspects of differentiation, right? And I think from a perspective of a parent, it is basically when I send my child to this particular school, where do I see my child 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the line? And I think that kind of trickles down back into choosing the particular school, whether it's purely academic focus, or it is co-curricular, or it could be a mix of both. And I mean, if I have a child who's very musically inclined and has some learning disability and is academically challenged, where do I send my child? If my child is very, you know, athletic, and so all of these aspects kind of combine together. But at the end of the day, coming back to the, you know, if I could end with one thing of brand, it is, you know, it takes a long time to build. It takes a lot of dedication, a lot of sacrifice. And, you know, just like it's about trust in that brand. It is really important. But at the end of the day, we're talking about models and what is the purpose of building a brand? We never started a school thinking that, you know, 50 years down the line, we'll have X number of schools and we'll have a brand value of XYZ. That is not what our focus was, and that will never be. Our focus was to give quality education and access to children across the nation.
Sure. Thank you, Ryan. I think there is consensus on that, though, on the panel, right? I'm saying that it is ultimately the quality education which will stand this test of time. And also, it is not a year-long journey, but it takes time to be able to build a brand in this sector. But clearly, the promise of building a great educational brand is a great opportunity today. And I think that in the next decade or so, you would see many schools actually thinking of building themselves as a brand. Because once you build a brand, you attract the right talent. Right talent wants to come and work with you. You will be able to attract the right kind of parents who want to come and prefer your schools there. And ultimately, it would be teachers, yes, teaching resources there. And ultimately, it would be good for this sector itself. So that's all that we have time for, right?
Thank you so much, sir. One thing I would like to mention, when we were in school, we were asked in which school you are. We used to tell, yeah, so and so XYZ school, and then they used to ask which board. So people earlier used to identify themselves with the board, but thanks to people like you and people sitting over here, today you are taking care of our children from the moment he or she is picked from the house, safely, transported to the school, taken care from meal. Mothers are like, they are carefree now because of the midday meals and whatsoever you are providing. Thanks for making that culture now, making life easy for both children and for mothers. So big round of applause for all of you, and thank you for making such kind of an environment for us.
So thank you to all of us.
Yes, all of you and everybody. So I would request Mr. Hemant Sethi, who is the President, Elets Technomedia Private Limited, to please come over the stage and present the speaker memento to our eminent panelist over here. Mr. Prajod Rajan, who is the co-founder and CEO, EuroKids, for being such a good moderator. A huge round of applause, please. Mr. Rayan Pinto, CEO, Rayan International Group of Institutes. Mr. Vinesh Menon, Deputy CEO, Global Discovery Schools. Mr. Anirudh Gupta, CEO, DCM Group of Schools. Ms. Abha Meghe, Director, Meghe Group of Schools.